Great.
First of all, thanks so much for your time today. The first question I wanted to ask you was, what's your ultimate vision for mental health services in Australia? What level would you like to be at?
What I'd love to see is that there's multiple entry points through your life where you can access support. So young people can have a very easy entry into mental health support. But if people's mental health conditions get more complex, they equally can scale up the support that they get without the money side of it being part of the equation. Because right now, what we have is a situation where if you have money, you are far more likely to be able to access high-level mental health support than if you don't have money and you're relying on the public system. We have a two-tiered system. I would like to see the same level of support available for people through Medicare as we have for people who use private healthcare. But we've got a really long journey to get to for that. And the other thing I'd love to see is that if someone is feeling suicidal, their only option is not to go to hospital. Now, we are just starting to see pilots around safe spaces that are being created for people in that situation, but we've got a really long way to go, because that's where we lose a lot of people is in there's no support other than emergency, and they go to emergency and they don't necessarily get the help that they need, and they're discharged, and then within a few days of discharge, I think it's a fortnight of discharge, that's the biggest risk for suicide, because again, we haven't got that bit of the system right. So there's from when I first interacted with the system 15 or so years ago, there's been some big improvements, but there's still all these bits that need help. But you know, wouldn't it be great to know that it's not the size of your wallet that determined how good the mental health support was that you got? It was just the fact that you had a Medicare card.
Yeah, that's so important. When do you think we could expect to see one open in the Hawkesbury?
Well, I'm actually surprised we haven't had an announcement by now. I'm surprised, disappointed, like all those things. Mm-hmm. So I just don't know. But we know we've got an election coming sometime between now and May. Perhaps it's going to be used in a pre-election announcement. I would really hope not. So my expectation is we'll see it sooner rather than later, and definitely before the next election. If it's not announced in the lead up to the next election by the government, then I will absolutely have more to say about it, because there is just no doubt that I've got a fundamental commitment that if it hasn't happened by the next government, then we absolutely have to set aside that money for it.
I know this is a personal issue for you. Could you please tell me a bit more about that?
Yes, so I didn't know very much about mental illness and the challenges of getting mental health support till I had a daughter, 15 plus years ago, who by the time she was in year 9 was suicidal. And clearly in the years leading up to that, she had observed things, but it wasn't obvious to us as her family, the pain that she was in. So that was the point when she was, look, I can't even tell you the exact age now, 14 or 15, I think it was 14, where we started trying to access, first off emergency departments and enter the mental health system through the emergency department, and then from there try to go, okay, there's clearly a problem, and she hasn't killed herself, but we need support now to help her work through whatever it is that's going on. So that was a process that took years, cost her a lot in terms of the effort she had to make. It took a lot of money and a lot of time with little result. And that was our experience of going, oh my goodness, this is really hard. Now, things have improved since then. And young people have a better way of talking about this stuff earlier. And there's a recognition by parents that this can be a thing. but at that time, it really was something people didn't speak about a lot. Now, my daughter Phoebe was very happy for people to understand what was going on, why she couldn't always, she always got to her events, but why she would not always be herself at her soccer or her ballet or all the other things that she did. She actually ended up leaving school at the end of year 9 because her school attendance was very poor. But she was offered a place at a ballet school, a professional ballet school. She was an extraordinary ballet dancer. And so she had a pathway that she could take that allowed her to do the thing that got her out of bed in the morning. And so not every kid is as lucky as that, nor are they as lucky to have parents who could afford to do that or were willing to do that. And it was a very big journey for all of us, that first 12 months and then the subsequent years. So we've all learned a lot, and she's just turned 30. And lives with a mental illness and takes responsibility for managing her mental illness, and is a highly functioning and high achieving person. She's an actor now. It's not a great time to be an actor, but she continues to, that's her creative need that she follows. So that's what got us in. But the thing is, once you have a child and you talk about it, or they talk about it, other parents tell you all the stuff that's going on in their lives too. Whether it's mental illness, whether it's a physical illness, a debilitating or chronic physical illness, whether it's a disability, a learning issue, you find out really fast that no family is without its challenges, and that the systems that we like to think are there don't necessarily provide the support that you would hope. So that's really was a real awakening of it. And I'm very fortunate that Phoebe is comfortable. She will speak about some of it. She's been an advocate herself for SANE and done some suicide prevention work with them about, maybe it's 2 years ago now, or 18 months ago now. So she thinks that you need to talk about this stuff, and that people will look at her and go, oh, well, if she's a bit like me, or gosh, if she can talk about this and get through it, maybe there's some hope for me.
Yeah. And it's great to hear that she's doing well and doing what she loves now.
Yeah, well, life is a roller coaster. And you know what you learn to make the most of every moment of it, because things can shift very quickly.
Yeah. What other projects are you working on?
Oh, there's so many. There's look, right now, I think we're all focused on getting back to some normality out of COVID, while still recognising that COVID, the Delta variant, and any others are going to be around. So small business is a real key area of support. And you think about the impact that fires had on the tourism sector in the Blue Mountains, and you look at the support that's needed to get that sector back thriving again. That's just a huge amount of support that is needed in a whole lot of ways. Now, some of it is coming in through bits and pieces of bushfire funding, and there's another round happening at the moment, but I think that's got to be a really key area of community development, the Upper Mountains, tourism and hospitality sector. But in the interim, even supporting them to be able to reopen and looking at how that happens, and in a way that we don't get this us and them stuff around vaccinated people and unvaccinated people. We've got really big social issues that we need to work through, because the community has become increasingly divided. So that's, like, I look at my electorate and I think, oh, the Upper Mountains, there's just so much to do up there to get that back to being a really thriving tourism and local economy. So that's one thing. You know, we've also got big issues like Western Sydney Airport and where the flight paths will be and what impact that will have on us. So that's something I continue to push for. There's things like the infrastructure the roads that are being built in the upper mountains and in the Hawkesbury, the bridge that's being constructed, massive projects with huge amounts of Commonwealth funding. And I think every MP's job, and I know this will be happening with the state MP as well, in each area, the desire to make sure that those projects best meet the needs of the local community and are done with as minimal impact as possible to the local community. So there's some of the big things. And I guess the other one, which is not Blue Mountains and Hawkesbury specific, but is fundamental for us, is action on climate change and making sure that there are policies that ensure we build a really strong renewables energy so that we can switch our reliance from fossil fuel sourced energy to renewable energy. I mean, that has just got to be one of the single most fundamental things that we should all be working at every level, at a community, council, state and federal level. And I know in the Blue Mountains and in some levels of government in the Hawkesbury that is happening too. So yeah, there's probably a dozen other really big things but there's some of them.
They're all really important though. And I've got one last question for you. What would you like people to know about you personally?
This is probably the hardest question of the lot. You know, when you've been around, as I have now, as a political aspirant or a member of parliament for 11 years, you think people know who you are, but in fact, you know, they don't. There's hundreds there'd be tens of thousands of people who really don't. So what I'd like them to know is that I've come into politics to try and make changes that will benefit families and people who might be doing okay, but suddenly they find themselves not doing so okay. And you just never know when your family or you as an individual will get hit by something. And that's where governments are there to either support you through a temporary phase so that you can move through it, or to provide you long-term support so you can deal with whatever it is life has thrown your way. And I worry when people think that politics is made up of politicians, because I just see myself as a mum, a daughter of someone in aged care, a former small business owner who really thinks about as each individual aspect. I recognise that all our lives are different and we all have different needs. Now, if your life is going fantastically, that's great. Then you probably need as little government interference in your life as possible, and that's the ideal. But if it's not, they're the group of people that we have to be fighting for. People who are so busy just trying to get through life that they don't necessarily have the energy to fight for themselves. And they need us to be saying, hang on, this isn't fair. Let's try and make this a bit more even. Because quite frankly, any of us tomorrow could end up with our lives fundamentally changed, as ours was